Hello. So today what I'm going to do is give you a tour of the Visual Studio Suite. When you first open up Visual Studio 2019, um, you won't be taken to the development environment right away. Instead, this window will open up, in which you will have on the very right, Open Recent, which will be a list of all your projects that you've opened over the last period of time. So by clicking on one of these, it'll automatically open your past projects. On the right, you have under the Get Started title, you'll have Clone or Checkout Code, which basically pulls your code from online repositories like GitHub or Azure DevOps, which are basically like hard drives which store your code provided by other organizations. You can open a project or solution, a Visual Studio's project or solution, by clicking on the second option. You can open a local folder and edit code within the folder, or you can create a new project, or you can even start Visual Studios without creating any of that. But let's create a new project. Next, when we create a new project, we'll be taken to the screen. Create a new project. On the left, it says Recent Project Templates, which will be a list of the recent project templates that we've used recently. In my case, I used ASP.NET Core web application previously, but you might not have anything there. On the right, we have a list of the types of projects that we can create. We can create console apps. We can create ASP.NET Core web applications, Blazor applications, ASP.NET web applications, a class library, and much more. This will depend on what you installed. You might even have more options than me or less if you didn't install the appropriate functionality in the Visual Studio's development environment. So now let's click on ASP.NET Core Web Application, since that's what this course is about, and click Next. And for the name of our project, we'll call it Tour. And then click Create. Basically what this means is that we're specifying what we want to call our project. Next, we'll be taken to the following screen, and we can define the architecture of the template website that our ASP.NET Core web application will have, and that Visual Studios will generate by default. You can either create an empty ASP.NET Core application, an API architecture web application, a Razor page web application, the model view controller architecture web application, the Angular web application with a .NET Core backend, a React .js web application with the ASP.NET Core backend, or a React and Redux web application with the ASP.NET Core backend. What Angular, React, and React.js and Redux are basically frameworks that run in your browser. .NET Core is called a server-side programming language because it runs on the server that is hosting the files rather than on your browser. So we selected that, and here we have interesting options. We have authentication, and it says no authentication, and we could change it. And basically what this does is auto-generate a login and registration page. If you select no authentication, it's not going to generate that. If you select individual user accounts, you'll get interesting options. Store the user accounts in-app, which will store the accounts and create user storage on your web server, or you can connect to another computer on the cloud. The cloud is basically computers somewhere else that you don't have control over. Put simply, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but sometimes you might have it pre-set up. Or you can select work or school accounts. Here your organization or your school might have application running that hosts user accounts and has user accounts that's shared by all applications on the cloud, or for a single organization or multiple organizations. And you could also specify how much access you have to that user controlling application. And then we have Windows authentication. This is for applications that run within a network. So basically what this will do is we'll use your Windows login credentials, which is basically what you log in to Windows with, and send that to your web application that you're using. And that will be your user ID by default. So that's amazing that Visual Studios will generate all this code for us right off the bat. But we're going to select no authentication for our case. And we'll click OK. Underneath we have advanced, configure for HTTPS. So if we select that, basically it will host our website with configurations that protect the connection. So anyone viewing the connection externally through tools that are used to monitor other computers and monitor the internet won't be able to see what you're doing. And Docker support, I'm not going to even get into that right now, but you can Google it and click Create. And Visual Studios will generate a template code for us, the bare minimum website, and the following folder structure. I'm not going to get into what this folder structure means, but I'm going to, because this is a tour of Visual Studios. So the Solution Explorer window basically shows you your project and the files associated with your project. You'll also notice another Team Explorer tab, which will allow you to connect to your remote repositories. If you remember that you could load projects from remote repositories that have your code somewhere else on another computer. Azure DevOps and GitHub are examples of this, although there are other service providers out there that allow you to store your code. And if you click on a file in the Solution Explorer, you'll see underneath we have a Properties window. What this Properties window allows us to do is change things like how our file is handled by the actual design studios and other things that you might want to set up. Furthermore, on the left, you'll see our coding window. So when we clicked on a file, it automatically opened up the code for that file in this window. And below, we have the output window. In this window, it actually gives us feedback on what's happening on a high level in our program. And we could also print out information that we want from our program to display in this window for debugging purposes. We have another tab called Error List. Here, if there's something wrong with your code, it's going to display the issue here in this window. And we have the Package Manager console, which will allow us to install additional functionality in our web application. At the top of the screen, we have the Save buttons, just like most Windows applications, the ability to open projects and the ability to run our project. So let's run it and see by pressing the Play button in IIS Express and see what happens. Okay, so our web application automatically opened up in our browser, and this is the framework that Visual Studios generated for us. It's basically a simple welcome page without a login or registration, and we have a privacy page, and that's it. That's the entire web application that was generated for us. So let's press the stop button. Notice how this changed and many options were disabled once we press play. If we go back to the play button, we'll see a drop down, which we could select, in which we could select which browser to open up our application in when it starts running, and whether we're allowing the application to be debugged while it's running. And here we have a variety of other options and functionality that we have access to. But for now, we're not going to go into that because that's basically all you need to know for now. And as additional things come up and we use more of the power of Visual Studios, I'll get into that. On the left, also, we have something called a Server Explorer. So if you have an underlying data source that you're connected to and you want to explore it or see what's going on there in it, you can actually go to the Server Explorer window and add that data source and view the data real time through this. And we also have a toolbox in the case where you are creating a program or application, and you are using an event-driven model of design for your website, which is totally different. You'll have options here to add controls and stuff. But for now, we're not going to get into that because we're going to be doing all the code ourselves. So yeah, that's our initial tour of Visual Studios, and there's much more to it other than that. But we'll learn about the additional functionalities as we get more into the programming. So yeah, that's all for now. Till next time. See you soon.